Good morning, members. Good morning, staff on the forum. Apologies for the delay. We've had a bit of challenges this morning, technical challenges, due to most people being affected by load shedding. We are in the special ER Energy Regulator meeting number 239 of 9 March 2022. We've got an agenda in front of us. If we can then just commence with the agenda. Secretariat, Mr. Mabunda, if you can please indicate if we've received any apologies.
Thank you, Chair. From members, none. It's just that they are affected by various issues, but we're hoping that they will join us. Only one apology was received from Ms. Harrison, who is attending to other NERSA engagement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mabunda. I recognize you, Mr. Ntanzi. I see your hand is up. You may go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Chair. Just to record the apology from the CO, who's also affected by load shedding. Thanks.
The apology is noted of Ms. Harrison as well as the CEO. If we can then go back to the agenda, we won't be having any health and safety moment. We do have the ethics moment. If Mr. Mabunda, you can please take us through that, though noting that this is a special meeting. Just take us through this ethics moment, please.
Thank you, Chair. Where are we here? Thank you, Chair. The ethics for the month of March is agility and innovation. Agility and innovation are fundamental for the growth and success of organizations. Agility refers to an organization's level of responsiveness, its ability to change and adapt. Innovation is the development and implementation of new processes, services, and service delivery standards to improve efficiency and effectiveness. Agility and innovation requires us to have productive meetings, which will create a space where all views and ideas are heard and ventilated, to create an environment that embraces and encourages experimental learning and improvement, which will be promoting a humane and trusting and respectful culture, to bring an end to uncoordinated silo strategies by involving more people in workshops and discussions, to embrace technology, to make use of all available IT tools, and to expose ourselves to cross functions by using techniques, coaching, advanced training and development path. We are therefore encouraged to be more agile and innovative in the execution of our duties and to find solutions that improve efficiency and effectiveness. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mabunda. If we can then go to the agenda. Item 3, adoption of agenda on regulatory agenda items. I believe that this has been uploaded on BoardPad and everyone has had access to the agenda. Are we happy with the agenda as is, or would like to make some proposed additions to the agenda? Can I get an indication by a show of hands? If we are happy with the agenda as is, can I then get any mover? Oh, Mr. Mukwena, welcome, sir. Chairperson? Okay, okay, Ms. Masetti, are you moving for adoption of the agenda? I'm seeing multiple hands now.
Yes, we are supporting the agenda as proposed. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. The agenda has been adopted as is, and as the chairperson of the Energy Regulator has just joined us, to hand over to Mr. Mukwena.
Good morning, colleagues, and apologies. Thank you very much, Ms. Mpongoso, for steering the ship in my absence. There's a small glitch that I had to overcome. Thank you very much. Let's then proceed as you have just adopted the agenda. agenda item 3. Agenda item 4, we are cognizant of the fact that we need to make any declaration, both in terms of verbal ones in a meeting and those that we fill in the forms, which must then be sent to the board secretary as soon as we can, colleagues, as we have realized that this matter becomes important during the auditing period. Item 4, are there any verbal declarations so far? If not, we will then move on to item 5, which is an electricity subcommittee chairperson's report. Let me then hand over to the chairperson of the electricity subcommittee report to present the ESCOM retail tariff and structural adjustment application for the year 2022 and 2023. Mr. Gumeta, you do have the floor, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, and thank you. Good afternoon to members and stakeholders that have joined us. I am joining from the phone. I'm hoping that I'm pretty audible. Fortunately, we are on level on stage 4 load shedding, so I have been affected by that. But Chairperson, I will present the ELS report to the report of the ELS, which is here to request the energy regulator to approve the decision and the decision for the ESCOM's retail tariff and structural adjustment application. On the 28th of February 2022, ESCOM submitted its ERSA application for the 22-23 financial for the year for the financial year 22-23, together with the schedule of standard tariffs for approval. The 22-23 schedule of tariffs for the implementation on the 1st of April 2022 for the non-local authority customers, and the 1st of July 2022 for the local authority customers. On the 4th of March 2022, the Electricity Subcommittee recommended the approval to the energy regulator. The members deliberated and raised a number of issues which are tabled which are detailed on table 1 of the report. Just to mention a few, members did raise an issue in terms of there was an issue around the subsidy. The question is who's benefiting from that subsidy. And whether that subsidy, the beneficiaries of that subsidy were low-income households or low consuming household, because the EPP states that it's meant to be for the low-income household. The management did indicate that the subsidy is intended for the low-income household. The other issue that I thought I would raise, that members raised, was members inquired on the status of the updated cost of supply studies and the structural adjustments on the tariff. Members further advised that the RFD, that in the RFD there must be a requirement for ESCOM to submit an updated cost of supply and structural changes. Management did indicate that ESCOM did submit a tariff structural plan, but there was an engagement between ESCOM and NESA that resulted in the postponement of the implementation due to the changes within the ESI and the proposed changes to the pricing approach. And also the members also raised an issue around the 23 billion, whether how that was, the question was how was that dealt with in terms of the ERSA, and the indication was that all of the revenues that were applicable for the year 22 or for the year 22-23 have actually been dealt with, and that it will be that the remaining 59 billion of the in terms of the equity injection, that will be dealt with and will be included in the subsequent years, but that for this particular the coming financial year, that there is no inclusion of any of the amounts accruing from the 51 billion, from the 59 billion rands. Chairperson, the last issue that I thought I would raise here is that there was also members were asking there was an issue which pertained to the concern around the actual recoveries, which were the actual recoveries related to, I'm talking about the municipal customers now, that there seemed to be an issue in between the actual recovery between April and June, and why the increase in July generally it tends to be higher, but in this particular case it seems like the increase is lower, and this was actually discussed and explained in the sense that there are instances where Eskom has actually over-recovered between April and June, and therefore later on between July and the following March, that then would then have resulted in a reduction in terms of the tariff that has been asked for. This will then be reflected, Chairperson, in the decision that is actually being proposed to the energy regulator. It is for that reason, Chairperson, that we then that the energy regulator has then been asked to approve the decision and the reasons for decision for the Eskom's ERSA, with the average increases to the various categories that are reflected in Table 1. Chairperson, I'm not sure whether I can indicate what the proposed increases are, but these are captured in Table 1. I think perhaps, Chair, when you make once the energy regulator has made the decision, we can then indicate what those increases are that are proposed in that Table 1. So we are here, Chair, to request those that the energy regulator approve those increases that are indicated in Table 1, but also to then approve the schedule of tariffs that has been submitted by Eskom, which is attached here to as Annexure B. But also to then also request that the energy regulator note that the tariffs that are proposed are exclusive of VAT, which as you know, Chairperson, the rate has been increased from 14% to 15%, as was announced last year. Chairperson, I hand over this report. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gumede. Colleagues, any questions that you may want to put to Mr. Gumede? First of all, perhaps let me Let me start, Mr. Gumet. In fact, I would just comment on the issues that we have already commented. Thank you very much. The first one being the subsidy. Is it possible to mention the tariff level or which type of tariff is the ceiling for such subsidies of low income customers? Thank you. And then the second one is the one that you also mentioned regarding the structural changes in the cost of supply study. I see in the response from management, there's no address around the cost of supply study. To me, it's still very unclear. Notwithstanding your explanation now, it sounded like you were talking about structural adjustment. What about the cost of supply study? When did ESCOM last submit such a situation? Thanks for the explanation on the 23 billion. No response there. Turning to the other page 4, looking at the table. That municipal 1 July 2021, I was just wondering whether it is not 2022. But be that as it may, I am not sure how to explain the lower 8.61 that is reflected there. One would take it that is an increase from July to the end of the financial year, which is March the following year, and then the deficit could be ascribed to the collection that the municipalities has done from March to June. Could you just confirm that particular case? I know you've just mentioned, but it is not clear for me. Why is it 8.61? And the only explanation is the one that I'm trying to give. And of course, the affordability subsidy, I know it's defined in the reasons for the decision towards the end, but the explanation is very short for me. It just compares two figures, the 4-figure percentage and the 5 point something percentage. Getting into the reasons for the decision itself, I think on page 7, page 2, there will be some updating there in terms of the meeting of today. It's unfortunate that the annexure B was loaded a little bit late, and both attended annexure C and annexure B. So I had raised some question regarding this whole question around to approve the attached schedule, which is annexure B. I think now it just came fairly late, and of course one has looked at it. Sorry. Elements of this retail tariff can we talk about? For instance, if you talk about volumes, I see in the document you expand a little bit on the split between municipal volumes versus non-municipality. I was just wondering, are we not supposed to go to that level in terms of overall approval? If it is possible, a disaggregate between the various customers, starting from residential, commercial, industry, mining and rural areas. I know it may well be in the schedule, but I thought that at a very macro level, wouldn't be something that we as a regulator will then approve or be familiar with. I think I will leave the other the other insertion somewhere, and I must also request if the tables, if for instance, if you look at table 7, it's very difficult to see those numbers. There are a few others as well on table 9 on page 15. So I think we need to just make sure that if possible, that those tables have enough of font for us to have sight of the figures that are reflected. I will then hand over to you, sir. Or let me take Mr. Mkize before. Mr. Mkize?
No, Chairperson, I'm a member of the ELS, and I appreciate what the team has done in terms of incorporating the comments that we had put forth in the ELS meeting. Save for the fact that the 14.26 in the submission is got an asterisk, and I was thinking that beneath the table 1 would then kind of explain that before going further. It would help for one to grasp these figures and be able to understand what they mean, especially if you look at the 14.26 as well as the difference between 9.61 and 8.61. Thank you. But I'm appreciative and I support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mkize.
So sorry, I think also it's important to just highlight the fact that this becomes a consequential decision, in the sense that with the determination, then things then follow that determination. Just to highlight this aspect, especially if there are no deviations that are aligned to that decision that has already been taken. Thank you.
Sir, before I hand over to Mr. Gumede, Mr. Mkize, the point you are making shouldn't be a prelude for the resolution. If, in other words, should well, I mean, it's not necessarily a decision, but it's really to indicate that all what follows is based on the average price that has already been approved. I think for a non-technical reader that may be useful. Mr. Kumeta, would you like to respond, sir?
Thanks, Chair. Apologies, I'm using one gadget, so I'm struggling to unmute. Thanks. I'd like to thank both yourself and Mr. Mkize for the questions. I will be assisted by colleagues in responding to the questions, but I think maybe before I start, I think it's great that I start with the last comment made by Mr. Mkize. That it's just to clarify again, that the energy regulator sets, or it approves well, let me put it this way. It regulates the industry, it regulates Eskom by actually setting the allowable revenue. But because the allowable revenue might be the allowable revenue for the base year that is coming, like in this particular case, 2022-23. But there may well have been other revenues that the regulator may have already approved. So this is a consequence, the EFTA is a consequence of all of those, the sum total of all of the revenues that would have been approved by the regulator, including the one that it would have set for the base year, then on top of that, it would then include all other revenues that the regulator may have previously approved. So the only change would have been if there had been an application for adjustment of tariffs, of tariff structures, based on the cost of supply study that Eskom would have then supplied. But in this particular case, as indicated, is that the cost of the Eskom had made an application last year, an application for the structural adjustments to its tariff, which approval was agreed between parties to be postponed, subject to inclusion of all of the changes that are actually happening in the industry, as well as incorporation of the changes to the pricing regime that the energy regulator had undertaken last year, which pricing framework has not been fully implemented anyway. But the issue that this is a consequence decision, and in fact, the energy regulator approves the tariffs as opposed to setting the revenues. So Eskom basically takes all of these revenues that have been approved, the total revenues that have been approved, and with by the energy regulator taking those revenues, it then says, knowing where it actually collects those revenues from, it allocates the revenue to the different category of customers based on its structure and based on its retail structure, and then coming out of that, then it then decide what the respective increases will be to those customers, to those customer categories. But I would actually request the management to expand further on that issue going forward. Mr. Mkhize, thanks for the enhancements, and I think the team has did try to expand further, but perhaps may have missed the point that we have raised before, and I think there may well be others as well, in terms of those if there is a particular point like the subsidy question raised by Chair. If there's an asterisk, it can then be explained in terms of how that subsidy is from which customers that or customer categories is that subsidy collected, and to whom is that subsidy paid. But there must be a footnote that basically explains that, and that colleagues in finalizing the RFD, they will definitely look at that. So, Mr. Mgena, in terms of your questions, I'm going to start from the top and also ask colleagues to then add where on issues that I may not have responded to. But the first one, the correction, Chairperson, you are correct. That's supposed to be the 1st of July 2022 and not 2021. That is well noted, and thanks for that, and colleagues will correct that. In terms of the subsidy, as indicated, it is the large users that are actually paying the subsidy to the low-income household. And that subsidy, although it's indicated as the increase is a whole lot higher than the overall increase that was approved by the energy rate of 9.61, the subsidy, the affordability subsidy is increasing at 14.26, and that is not because of the it's because of the declining volumes by the customers by the category of customers that are affording that that subsidy. So it is what the quantum itself may not have changed substantially, and if Dr. Konjolaya can prepare himself to actually respond to that in detail. But what has happened is that the volume has declined, and therefore, what in terms of percentage terms, that is why that increase is the increase in the subsidy. The subsidy is increasing at a higher rate than the other category of costs. But Dr. Konjolaya will expand on that. In respect of the submission of the cost of study and the structural adjustment, Chairperson, both are actually interlinked, because the structural adjustment of the EDSA would have been based on the cost of supply. Eskom did supply both did actually make the application last year, but unfortunately, as indicated, because of the changes in the industry, and also the proposed changes in terms of the pricing system, those adjustments, those changes to the structural adjustments, including the cost of supply study, those were kept in abeyance. They will be incorporated further as the price structures are changed. So Eskom did make an application, but there was a request from the energy regulator to then say if that can be kept in abeyance until all of these changes have been taken into until all the changes that are actually being considered have been included. That would include the treatment in terms of NMDs issues. It will also include issues around the actual tariffs in terms of the inclining block tariffs. There's a whole lot of changes that needs to be taken into account when this decision is then made. The next issue, Chairperson, that you raised is this issue, and I think Doc will actually explain this far better than I can. The 8.61 increase versus the 9.61 overall increase for everybody. And really, this is because we have to remember, Chairperson, is that basically for tariffs, what Eskom does, it translates the revenue. It says, I need X amount of revenue, and I'm going to collect it from Y number of customers who are buying whatever amount of gigawatt hours, and that will then that figure is then translated into a percentage increase. But it seems that in this particular case, because of the revenue that is allocated, there was a whole lot more revenue allocated for the period between, in terms of municipal customers, for the period between April and June, and therefore that resulted in terms of the in terms of the recovery from those volumes between April and June. It resulted in Eskom being, if you like, it resulted in Eskom being in an over recovery position for that period, and therefore for the remaining period from July until March next year. Therefore, it then said to be able to recover the allowable revenue from that group of customers, it then resulted in a lower increase for the municipal customer, which is reflected as 8.61. But Doc will then explain further. In fact, I would then like to, the only thing that I would like to then perhaps talk to is just the inclusion of Annexure B. I'd like to apologize for the late inclusion of Annexure B. And there was, because of the timing, as you know, Chairperson, unfortunately the application only came on Monday last week and was considered and approved on Friday, and the colleagues finalized the actual submission for ER on Monday, but because of that, one or two documents actually got left behind, but that was updated 2 days ago, Chairperson. It's a pity if it only came through to yourself yesterday, but it was noticed and updated 2 days ago. But with your permission, Chair, I'd like to invite other colleagues, Mr. Sichotlo and his team, to perhaps add further where I may not have explained better, or maybe where I may address issues that I may have not addressed. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Please, colleagues.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Good afternoon. I just wanted to add on the issue, first of all, of the subsidy, as well as the the reason for the increase of 8.61. So the subsidy, the reason the subsidy is increasing, first of all, it's because the cost to serve the customers automatically increase due to the 9.61 increase. So because of the change in the allowed revenues, the cost to subsidize those customers increases, but the subsidy needs to be maintained at the same level of subsidization. But secondly, as Mr. Gumede has mentioned, the subsidy payers, which are typically the 90% of the subsidy comes from your Megaflex customers, which are your large power users. So because the volumes are declining from those customers, it means that they need to pay a higher price to still be able to cover the subsidy that is required for these customers, the Homelight 20 amp customers. Chair. So, and then normally the third reason would be because the customers that needs to be subsidized might increase from year to year because of new, for instance, new connections, new residential areas that get connected to the grid. But in this instance, it's actually declining. So, but those would be the three reasons why the subsidy would increase from year to year. And Chair, that's quite correct. It's for low income customers, because those are customers are on a 20 amp circuit breaker, which is quite small. It can only accommodate a few appliances. So once you become more affluent, you would have to move to a higher tariff, 60 amp or 8 amp. Thanks. So and then on the second question around the increase of 8.61. So yes, it's quite correct. So because from April to end of June, municipalities would not see an increase, but because last year's price was higher, so Eskom would actually over recover from these customers. That's hence there is a lower increase for them. So if you go to table 8 of the RFD, it explains that the 8.61 is calculated as a change from last year's price of 1 to 9.13 cents.
Sir, could you mention the page, please? Table 8.
Sorry, Chair. So it's page, the bottom page, the blue. Oh, it's page. Okay, I don't see the bottom now. So it's page 19 of 24. The blue font. So the explanation there at the bottom, the footnote explains that because of the change in price from last year's price of 1 to 9.1% to the current year price. So also there are other factors that influence whether the price is higher or lower, including the fact that the sales are changing. So the sales are declining, which means in some instances you'll have to recover more revenues over lower sales. But at the same time, so both the sales and the revenues are changing. So those are the factors that influence what kind of a price becomes for municipalities from July to March. So as Mr. Gumede has mentioned, in some instances, the price would be higher. So it's a combination of all those factors, Chair. But what is quite important is that Eskom still needs to recover the full allowed revenues over its own financial year. That makes it for municipalities to be 9 months. Thanks, Chair.
Just before you move to another person to assist, Mr. Konjelwa, if you take 8.61 and assume that the tariff this year and last year were equal, how much would that be over recovery add up to 86.1?
If you assume that last year's sales are equal or revenues are equal, I don't know, Chair. I'll have to add the table and calculate. But from top of my head, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. I think what I was saying basically is the fact that if because the difference of 8.61 is reduced due to the way I understand it, the explanation is reduced by the recovery that may have occurred during the last financial year between April and June. Now, what I was asking is that with the 8.61, not having that over recovery, how much would that 86.1 be? Or would it be the same as 9.61?
Oh, yes, Chair. I think yes, now I understand. It should be the same. It should be 9.61 for municipalities as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Please proceed. Mr. Chotla, I see your hand is up.
No, Chair, I was actually going to try and assist Dr. Kunjulwayo, and I think he's been assisted and responded to.
So, no, Chair, so there was another question around the aggregation of sales according to customer categories. So during the sales determination process, we do that aggregation. So we show for all customer groups in terms of the sales forecast. For instance, we'll show for negotiated pricing agreements, as well as international sales, so we'll split the sales forecast. But in this decision, we don't normally do that. But if you go to table 9, Chair, on page, so on page 20 of the document, it shows the split of all the revenues and how they will be recovered between different customer. So it shows the tariffs, not necessarily whether they are industrial, so or commercial, but it will show you, for instance, the mega flex, how much revenues will be recovered from those customers, as well as the sales. But we will enhance the RFD before it gets published, just to show that split between different customer categories. Thanks, Chair.
Which I would have requested if it was possible. I don't think it's necessary now. Like you have just indicated that those type of tariffs on the left-hand side are grouped in the various categories that we normally familiar with, and perhaps for us as a regulator to approve, it would give us a very good sense of what are the main drivers of the revenue. Obviously, it could be the industrial, but that also could help. I saw a hand. Please, you have the floor.
Chairperson, I just wanted to then expand, because there was an issue that you had requested in terms of the font sizes of the tables, that when we finalize the final draft, those tables will then be expanded so that they are readable. Table 9, for instance, is also suffering from the same problem, as well as that table 7, which you mentioned. The font size is too long, so perhaps it makes it very difficult to read. But before the RFD is published, all of those numbers will then be enhanced. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kumete. Any further input, colleagues? That would be okay for myself. Just the last question again, Mr. Kumete. I think this is canvassed in in the RFD. Would it not have been prudent for us to maybe not to approve, but to note the volume split between municipal and non-municipal, because it is covered in the RFT. I'm just asking that. So basically, my disaggregation has got two levels. The first one is the customer categories, and I think Mr. Kunjala has already answered that one in terms of table 9. And the second one, which is canvassed in the document, wouldn't that be useful? Maybe not necessarily a decision so far, but wouldn't that be useful to show a bigger picture? Thank you.
Chair, can I be assisted? Unfortunately, I got cut off a little bit, so I actually didn't quite hear the question. But please, Mr. Chop, please assist.
Chair, I think that the same question was asked at the ELS, and I'm just trying to find on the table where we responded to those questions. Yes, Chair, I think maybe Dr. Konjulaya can lead us to the actual paragraph where that has been done, because we have actually split. Remember the ESCOM disaggregation was about 50-50 split, but we reduced because historically and or based on what we know, the municipalities, ESCOM buys about 47, or municipalities buy about 47% from ESCOM, and the rest is bought by the other customers. And we were requested by the ELS to enhance that, and surely we did. We did that, but
Mr. Chotla,
lead
breaking.
us to where that.
Mr. Chotla, you were breaking. Maybe could you start one sentence back?
Yes, Chair. What I was saying is that there was a difference between ourselves and ESCOM in terms of that split in terms of volumes, wherein ESCOM had actually made the split to be around 50-50, but ours, based on the history and other factors, we came to 47%. But I was just trying to find the section. I don't know, Dr. Konjulwayo, maybe not, because it looks like my connection is bad. Can you just quickly come in?
Yeah, Chair, to be honest, I'm confused. I don't understand the question, Chair. I do apologize.
Mr. Chotla, do you want to explain the question that I've asked?
Yes, Dr. Konjolwayo, what Mr. Mukwena is actually asking is that we should actually enhance the split of the volumes and give reasons why our split is 47 versus that one of ESCOM being 50. And remember, we did explain at the ELS, and I was actually asking where you actually did that in the RFD to actually enhance the reasons for us to have had a different split between us and ESCOM. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So if you go to paragraph 21, which is page 16 of the document, as well as table 6, there it explains the split. There is also a footnote that explains. So from paragraph 21 on page 19, on page 16, sorry, to, if I may say, paragraph 24 of the document, we do explain the reasons for the split. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. No, thank you very much, colleagues. Are there any questions or contributions to make before we consider the recommendations? If not, colleagues, let me look at the recommendations, which will have a few changes. I think the introductory remark is raised by Mr. Kize there. It will help. And then the correction around municipal 1 July 2021 to 22, that's the correction. And also a request for a footnote explaining 8.61 and affordability subsidy of 14.26. All the other recommendations still the same, from 4.1, 4.12, and 4.13. Now, with those recommendations as amended, can a show by hand by members and see whether they support the approval of these recommendations? Thank you. Mr. Spanda, Mpongose, Ms. Maseti, Mr. Gumete, Mr. Mkize, CEO, and myself. So I think it's a full house. Colleagues, the recommendations have been approved with those minor amendments, which will then be reflected in the final approval. Thank you very much, colleagues. We will then move on to Mr. Gumete. The application is approved as recommended by the ELS with very minor amendments. We will then move on very quickly to item 6.1 in the agenda. Oh, Mr. Gumete, you have the floor, sir.
Thanks, Chairperson. I just thought perhaps because I had actually not actually read the actual decision properly, because I thought would actually for the record. I think it's important, Chairperson, to indicate that the energy regulator therefore has then approved that the increases for the total standard tariffs will increase at 9.61, and that for the municipal customers starting from the 1st of July 2022, the increase will then be 8.61. Just for the record, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think it's a good enhancement to point out that differentiation. Are there any objection to that one? Not by raise of hand. If you raise your hand, then it would be an objection. If there's none, I think then we would then proceed to the next item. There is none. Yes, let's move on to item 6.1. Ms. Kapika or anybody else who's tasked to present this.
Thank you, Chair. We just request members to take the report as read, just to emphasize the mining and mineral investment conference taking place tomorrow. We will try and get the link for those who may wish to attend virtually. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the purposes of those who may want to link up Mr. Ntanzi. So could you just give us just a flavor as who should we look for? Is the minister speaking or what is the situation?
Yes, Chairperson and members, it's hosted by the minister. The minister will be there. Provincial government will also be there. Officials from the department as well as the captains of the industry will be participating there. It's a very important conference, Chairperson, considering the unemployment rate in the country. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ntanzi. Any further questions on this item 6.1, colleagues? If there's none, colleagues, allow me then to indicate that the meeting is adjourned and the next meeting is scheduled for the 31st of March, 2022. And then we will certainly see you then. Thank you very much. And before I end up, I'd like to apologize for my late coming for reasons that I will not mention, and thank Ms. Mpongose for having steered the ship in my absence. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, colleagues.
Thanks, members.
Thank you, Chairperson and colleagues.